The things that bring happiness were not materials, but experiences. In order for giving and generosity to bring happiness, it needs to be a choice. You cannot force people to do it. If you force people to do it, they will not be happy. People who give feel happy when they feel a connection with what and who they are giving to. Why we are so happy to talk about investing and making money, but so reluctant to talk about giving. People often donate when there's emotional decisions involved. Some people go one step further, they see charity as penance. They feel guilty. Generosity can lead to happiness if there's joy, connection, and impact. Systematic benevolence and planned giving are often ridiculed by people who are not in these faith systems because you worked hard for it, you should go into your bank account and your bank account alone. People may not fully understand is that the underpinning concept is that the money doesn't belong to the people. When you see it in that context, it changes the paradigm altogether. Because active generosity brings happiness when you believe that the money is not yours. It's already been given to you, which you then give to someone else. Okay, well, good evening everyone. We're going to make a start. It's a smaller group tonight because I think it's a bit cold outside, and raining. But you made it to the last seminar in our 5-part series. How many of you have learned something so far? I've learned something preparing for all the talks. That's good. So tonight's presentation is titled Living on Borrowed Dime. Now, it's a play on words obviously. But there's a second play of words, where there's a will, there's a way to carve out your legacy. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about something people don't often talk about because it's scary. In some cultures, talking about this is taboo because it means that you're going to talk about your death. Usually people talk about this when they're about to die or closer to retiring / the latter part of their life. It's not something that as younger people we often think about, but it's something important, which is what I'm hoping to illustrate today. Start off with our usual disclaimer. This is not financial advice, it's education, so please don't say Daryl told you to do something. You can say Helen told you to do something instead. Right, so, just kidding. Just kidding. But you can get all the previous recordings if you're not here. You just make sure you sign up to our online platform and you'll be able to get the recordings and the resources from the previous seminars, and you'll get also some resources, the videos and other reading material, links, ebooks, etc. Online as well. One of the things that I want to tell you about, this is all the ways you can get there, but once we finish here, we actually are not going to be done because there's a follow-up presentations where we dive a little bit deeper. And we're going to talk a little bit, and I'll come back to this slide right at the end because the titles will reflect a little bit about carrying on the legacy that we start to talk about tonight in more detail. So looking at 3 things: the concept of contentment, the concept of character, and the concept of surrender. We've used some of these words already previously in our 4 presentations so far, and we'll talk about it again tonight. But if you want more information, you can scan the QR code or come and talk to me at the end. But we're switching to Saturday mornings over the next 3 weeks. So not this coming, not tomorrow, but next week in July 19th and then 26th and then August 2 as well. So looking at these 3 concepts as well. All the details will be found. You just got to scan the QR code. I believe it will also be on the NAS platform. It's already there, so you can sign up for that. So this is the follow-up if you want to go a little bit deeper. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about this, as I mentioned, but I want to start off with a quick question. How many of you have already changed something relating to your finances? Oh, that's maybe not for the better, for the worse. Some people didn't change anything. How many of you found that the change was beneficial? No one benefited from the change. How many of you found that it was hard to change? Okay. How many of you found the process of getting to the change helpful? Like thinking, maybe doing some reading, maybe reflecting? Okay, I'm going to ask the same question at the end. Just keep in your mind what you changed. Maybe it was your investment strategy, maybe it was your approach to spending, maybe it was prioritization. I'm going to ask you the same question in the end after we go through our presentation tonight. This is a picture that you've seen in our previous seminars. We talked a little bit about spending, earning and spending. We talked about saving. We talked about retiring and becoming financially independent and retiring early. We talked about investment, the last time round, investing. And tonight we're going to talk, not quite donating, but this last bucket here. That's what we're going to spend a bit of time talking about. If you got an email, how many of you have got some email that looks like this? Congratulations. No. Well, Heinrich is very lucky. He's getting congratulated. But the email goes something like this. Congratulations. You are the recipient of a gift. 10,000 US dollars.
Scam.
Oh, straight away. You know, if you've done your cybersecurity training in your workplace, you will immediately think this is a scam, right? But in this particular case, it wasn't a scam. If you've ever heard of this experiment, it was the $2 million experiment. An anonymous donor gave $2 million to the foundation that runs TED. You know TED Talks, TED? And they decided to do a social experiment where they went to look for 200 people and gave them $10,000 each. No strings attached. Now, I would have liked to be in that experiment. How many of you want to be in that experiment? Everyone? And they said, with this money, all around the world, they did this social experiment headed by a social scientist based in British Columbia in Canada. This is the lady here. I think her name is Elizabeth Dunn. She did this experiment using the money to conduct a very interesting study. Now, she's a social scientist. She's been studying the concept of happiness all her life. Her research area is happiness, specifically relating to money and the way people interact with finances. So in this social experiment, she picked 100 people or 200 people around the world and gave them $10,000 each. And the instructions were, you can do whatever you want with the $10,000, so long you fill out some surveys along as checkpoints, but there's no restriction on how you spend that money. Okay, so if I gave each of you $10,000 tonight, what would you do with that money? You volunteer?
Have a holiday.
Holiday? Sorry? Buy food? Heinrich, what would you do?
Buy
Shoes?
Buy shoes.
Pay your debt, okay? Buy shoes? Invest. Oh, we got someone who is listening to the webinar seminars here. Good.
Donate.
Oh, wow. Okay. Someone is preempting the topic tonight.
Yeah.
Run a half marathon. Okay. We have one here who's going to buy a ticket to run a half marathon. Lots of ideas, right? Basically, the experiment was, if we looked at the way people would spend money if they were given $10,000 for free, and to then establish how happy that made them. So this was the experiment. This social scientist and her team began through surveys and follow-up focus groups, began to understand a little bit about how this experiment went. And if you're interested, she actually wrote a book and a number of papers on it. So you can go online and TED Talks about this concept. It was the Generosity and Happiness Experiment. She found some really interesting concepts. I'm going to touch on them tonight. She found that the majority of people were actually very generous. What they did was, surprisingly, many of them actually spent the money on people other than themselves. In other words, they decided to maybe give someone a big gift. Maybe they decided to go on a holiday and pay for it with a friend. Some of them decided to even maybe buy someone dinner or buy them a nice present. In the experiment, it was surprising that the majority decided to spend at least quite a large proportion of that money on others. However, it was really interesting when they started to tease out why that was the case. That people said that they believed they did that, or they felt comfortable doing that because someone had given the money to them first. So that's the concept of active generosity. They were willing to give because someone donated it to them. They said, when the participants were responding to the survey, if they had known that they won the money in a lottery or that they had earned their money, they would be less likely to give. Interesting. Their happiness or their ability to give generously was linked to the concept of how the money came about. The second one, giving provides exponential distributed happiness. They had to do some happiness ratings in the survey, and they found that collectively, those 200 people were 225 times more happy collectively, cumulatively, than the person who gave the $2 million. Does that make sense? The ability and the exponential impact of giving and generosity actually made people and distributed that happiness across the board. So it's like saying, if Fred measured his happiness by donating $2 million to 200 people versus 200 people generously giving part of their $10,000 to others around them, that cumulative happiness is greater when 200 people do it. That makes sense, right? Even though the monetary value is the same. The third one is that the impact of the happiness, the impact of giving on happiness transcended reputational benefit. In other words, people were not giving so that people liked them more. They did a really interesting thing in the experiment where they divided the group of 200 into two. Half of them had to publicly go on Twitter, it was Twitter then, and write that they were giving out stuff. I got a gift today, I'm going on a holiday and paying for all my friends. Broadcasting essentially. And the other 100 were not allowed to tell people that they had a gift and that they were giving. So they tried to compare. And what they found was that happiness is not just dependent on reputational benefit. In other words, I gain some benefit by saying I'm such a generous person. I tell my friends, everyone, okay, today I'm going to pay for all your dinner. And everyone's like, oh, Fred is such a generous person. Well, Heinrich will pay for dinner, but don't tell anyone, right? So the happiness is not related to reputational benefit. It goes beyond that. It's the act of giving, whether recognized or unrecognized, that brings happiness. The fourth one is that the top two ways that brought happiness by using the $10,000 was not spending on shopping, unfortunately, but it was charitable donations and paying for experiences. So some of the experiences were not just like, I'm going to jump out of the plane and do skydiving, but some of those experiences were perhaps for benefits. Someone brought their mum to see a show that they had never been able to see. Someone brought their grandparents on a holiday where they always wanted to go. These are the types of experiences. The things that bring happiness were not materials, but experiences. Now, this may sound like, things you already know. But it's interesting that in a study, they're able to pull these things out in a social experiment, distilled to 3 key points. The 3 key points are this. In order for giving and generosity to bring happiness, you must have 3 ingredients. Number 1, it needs to be a choice. You cannot force people to do it. If you force people to do it, they will not be happy. Giving has to be an active choice. Number 2, people who give feel happy when they feel a connection with what and who they are giving to. If I just throw money in the air and don't know what happens to the money, I don't feel happy. But if I know that I'm benefiting someone, if I know that there is a reason or a connection to the person I'm giving, the entity I'm giving, the benefit, so to speak, or some cause that I feel passionate about, I'm more likely to feel happy. Number 3, if I understand the impact of the giving, it will bring happiness. Now, I want you to notice that it's impact, not outcome. Impact. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through. So number 1, choice. Number 2, connection. Number 3, impact. So if you can take away anything from this social experiment is, if you are giving, and this giving can be anything. It can be your time, it can be your money, it can be your energy. Choice, connection, impact. This is basically describing human behavior. This is a social experiment, right? It's describing human behavior. Let me give you an example. I work as a pediatrician, and this is often a discussion that we have. Some of us have friends that just had a newborn baby, and this is a very common discussion. breastfeeding for mums, new mums, is a not very pleasant process. Let me explain why, okay? If you haven't, any of you have gone through the experience or have a friend that's gone through the experience, you understand. Sometimes I have these conversations with my patients. They have a new baby and the mom is really struggling, and for a number of reasons. One, it's painful. Two, the baby doesn't suck properly, so it's difficult. The concept is difficult. Number three, you got to get up at all hours of the day to do it, right? And often there is sometimes a little bit of pressure. Some grandparents or some well-meaning friends will say, breastfeeding is very important, so you got to do it all day, every day, and the poor mom is at home stuck there trying to do this, and the baby is not feeding and crying, and everyone's getting upset and in tears, right? This is not necessarily a pleasant process. But do you know that when a mom breastfeeds a baby, there is a concept called a letdown reflex. Now, if you haven't heard of the letdown reflex, let me give you a little bit of a science lesson. I know it's talking about money tonight or finances, but let me just divert into human behavior for a second. If you're a breastfeeding mom and you go to the supermarket and another person's baby cries, sometimes you experience this concept called letdown reflex, where your milk supply starts to move. And that's because what happens is that a mom who's breastfeeding, when they hear a cry, it's an automatic response that a baby is hungry. And so it starts to stimulate the brain to produce a hormone called oxytocin. And oxytocin is a hormone that's produced to actually help milk supply to be generated. But more importantly, oxytocin is a hormone that gets produced when people give of themselves to benefit other people, i.e. love something else, love someone else, give altruistically with no expected benefit. So when a baby cries and is hungry, mom's milk supply starts because oxytocin is produced. Now, let me just go back a slide. A mom is not forced to breastfeed. There's choice. Especially in Australia, you've got options, you have formula, bottle, blah, blah, etc., lots of things. But a mom gets happy, the oxytocin flows when she chooses to breastfeed and feels a connection to her baby and knows that the baby is going to have an impact because the baby will stop crying because the baby gets milk and is less hungry. Does that make sense? So it doesn't really matter. These concepts are just human behavior. It doesn't matter whether you're donating money, time, or breastfeeding. It's the same concept. Generosity and giving has to have these three ingredients for you to actually feel happy. Now, I want you to contrast that a little bit. Give you another example. The last few seminars we've been talking about King Solomon, the richest man who ever lived. Remember last time we talked about the temple that he built, and he used wooden poles and trees to build the Lebanon cedars. Remember we talked about that last time, investing in that. The story when he finished the building was that he actually went to do what in Jewish culture was known as an offering, a sacrifice. It was a really interesting idea. If you read the account of his sacrifice, he decided to sacrifice 1,000 cows. Now, I just convert that into like modern day money. It's quite a large sum of money, 1,000 cows. But you can imagine, it's maybe one cow, maybe two cows, maybe 20 or 200, but he chose to do it 1,000 cows. And if you actually read the story of this account, you will start to see some key elements. It was his choice to decide how many cows were given in the offering. There's no set amount. He chose the number 1,000. He traveled the equivalent of about 20 kilometers to a place where the offerings were sacrificed. It was his connection to God that helped him to go down that path. And he realized that he wanted to give this specific offering because of the impact that the temple that he built, the instructions that he had, would have on the people of Israel, his nation. So it's a really interesting concept that you see these ingredients coming up in different stories around giving. However, when you contrast that to Australia, now moving back to money for a second, this is the average amount donated by age group. So, this is per year, by the way. So, if you go to this 25 to 34 age group or the 35 to 44 age group, that's where I assume all of us are, we donate in Australia on average $600 to $820 a year, not a week, a year to charity. Percentage-wise, do you know how much that is if you earn the median or average wage in Australia? It's less than 2%. It's actually quite little. It's not a whole lot. Now, for those of you who are in the business, familiar with numbers, you get a tax deduction in Australia for a donation to a charity if you donate more than $2, right? So, you know, it's a reasonable amount. But if you connect that to the earlier social experiment where people donated a large proportion of their money, you start to see why that's the case, right? First of all, this is money you earn, so you may be a bit less willing to take it out. Maybe there's no connection, maybe there's no measure of impact. Whatever it is, we don't seem to be, as Australians, a very generous group. Now, this is just money. I'm sure people donate lots of other things, their time, their energy, their resources to go to different places. When I started to dig into this a little bit more to understand why we are so happy to talk about investing and making money, but so reluctant to talk about giving, I came up with 4 reasons. I call them the giving traps. Let me see whether these things apply to your thinking or maybe thinking that you've heard before. Number 1, people often donate when there's emotional decisions involved. Let me give you an example, right? You know when you're walking outside Woolies or you're walking down Flinders Street and someone comes to you, excuse me, I need 2 minutes of your time. They wear a t-shirt and they have a clipboard, right? And they're trying to get you to donate to the wildlife fund or some other fund. And you're like, oh, just stop bothering me, like go away, right? But then one day you watching TV and then maybe there's a ad, often with dramatic music and a poor child that's crying and very skinny, and you feel, oh, I feel so sorry for them. Okay, I'm going to donate. World Vision or whatever it may be that has an ad. That's often how we feel, right? When someone has a picture, when it plays on your emotions, okay, we just do it. But when you don't see it, you don't give. You understand what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying that's what you guys are. Maybe you are all very generous donors. But this is one of the traps that we fall into. We give only when our emotions are tugged on. Some people go one step further. They see charity as penance. They feel guilty. Oh, I earn more than those, poor people in a war-torn country. Maybe I should give it. But I give it to assuage my guilt. Because I'm able to earn more, because I have a high literacy, whatever I do, I just feel like, yeah, I'll do it because that makes me feel like a better person. Another trap is, there's an ulterior motive. If I do it, I reduce my tax. If I do it, I'm able to get some benefit, right? Maybe I get to network. Some people donate money because they get to network. Or if I donate to your art festival or music center, whatever, I get to be on the board and then I get to talk to influential people. So there's an ulterior motive behind giving. Doesn't mean that they're not generous, but they're generous for another reason. Number 4, there's this giving trap where people go, if I don't see an outcome that I like, I'm not going to donate, right? So I'll go through the charity. I see people do this. They go, how much does your charity spend on administrative costs? If I donate $100 and you spend $25 or $50 on admin, I'm not donating to your charity because I don't like what you do. So they start to measure and they start to compare the outcome. If I don't see that this charity is doing what I want, I'm not donating anymore. They become skeptical about what people claim to do. And so sometimes maybe you and I fall into these traps, and therefore we are quite, don't want to, this charity, there's a scandal, that charity is not great, or these people don't use the money properly. I only do it, okay, tax year is coming, I need to reduce my tax, okay, I'll just give some $601.27, because I haven't done it for the year. And you see this, unfortunately, charities play on this because they know that this is a type of behavior, right? Towards the end of financial year, they say, you've got 48 hours left before the end of financial year, if you donate, you can donate, blah, blah, blah. People play on that because that's the way we think. I want to change this narrative tonight because as you saw from the earlier experiment, generosity can lead to happiness if there's choice, connection, and impact. So instead of giving traps, I'm going to talk about giving tips. There are 4 giving tips. Number 1, systematic benevolence. Number 2, regular, or what you can call it planned giving. Number 3, the concept of sacrificial generosity. And number 4, controlling the purpose, not the outcome. And we're going to talk a bit about these tonight, these 4 things. Number 1, systematic benevolence. Systematic benevolence is a very fancy term for saying a systematic, planned way and an organized way, let me call it that, of charity. Okay, you can do it. And while I may talk about money tonight, like dollars and cents, this can also apply to time, energy, resources, skills. You can apply the same principles to that. Systematic benevolence often has a certain fixed percentage of your income or earnings if you're donating. So it could be 1%, it could be 5%, it could be 10%, it could be 20%, whatever you decide. There may be different types. It may be annual, every year. It may be planned in terms of when I sell this asset, I'm going to donate, or when I get a pay rise, I'm going to do it. When I check my tax at the end of the year, I'm going to do it. It could also be a specific giving around a particular event or a life stage. When I retire, I'm going to do it. It's what you would term as organized concepts. The organization not only is about the money amount or the percentage, not only about the event or the triggers for the giving, but it's also about deciding who you're going to give. So it's not just random, one day someone came up to you in the street or one day you saw an ad. It's actually planned with intention. And this organized concept is actually scaled. In other words, it doesn't just depend on a specific trigger. It doesn't depend on a specific earning amount, but if you earn $1 today, you do it, and if you earn $100 the next year, you do it, and if your money or earnings increase to $100,000, you continue to do it. And that's often why it's percentage-based. Many historic or anchor value systems in the world, faiths, religions, etc., all have this built in as part of their system. I'm going to give you some examples. If you're Muslim, there is the concept of zakat, Z-A-K-A-T. Zakat means that you actually are required to donate 2.5% of your income above a certain threshold. Now, historically, the threshold was measured in gold and silver. So if your earning exceeds 87.6 grams of gold or 612 grams of silver, you're required to pay 2.5%. Not required, but that is what is part of their belief system. So in today's language, I converted for you, it's about $11,000 Australian for gold. If you want to use silver, it's about $600. So that's most people, if not all of us in this room, earn more than $11,000 a year. So if you think about it, it's 2.5%. So it's 2.5% of anything that goes above. If you earn 100,000, it's 2.5. You earn 500,000, it's 2.5. You earn $1 million, it's 2.5. And it's a yearly giving. You give it usually around the time of Ramadan. That's the practice that Muslims have. The Jewish faith also has a very similar concept. This here is Esher, or describing Easter, sorry, not Esher, but it's describing, that's the number or the word for 10, and this actually describes the concept of giving 1 in 10 or 10% of their earnings. And they also have a different concept here on the right-hand side. I'm just going to look at my notes. Tzedakah boxes, which are basically something you give before the Shabbat, where you can give a free will offering that is collected to benefit people who are less fortunate than you. So systematic giving is built into the Jewish culture as well. It's built into the Muslim culture. It's built into the Jewish culture. They do it every week, and they do it also on a regular basis when they earn money. 10% and free will giving once a week before their Shabbat. In the Christian faith, it's very similar. If you look in the Bible, there is this concept of tithe. Tithe, which I'll talk about in a second, is a 10% giving scaled over time. So all these concepts here of certain percentages, different types of giving at different times or different trigger events with clear giving parameters and intentions scaled, part of this are actually part of many historical faiths. But in today's society, we have lost this as faiths and value systems have changed over time. This has not necessarily percolated. It's become a little bit more sporadic. It's become a little bit more scattergun. It's become a little bit more hit and miss. But these were implemented early on, and I think there's a reason for it, as we'll discover. So we'll come to the second point, which is regular giving. Regular giving is alongside systematic benevolence. So systematic benevolence is an organizational, planned way of giving. Regular giving looks more at the time frame. Okay, How regularly are you giving? Is it every day, every week, every month? Time. In fact, it goes more than that. It looks at whether you take the impulse out and keep the emotion. So often, remember, one of the traps was we just give when we feel like, oh, I feel guilty now. I'll just take my $600.01 out. So actually, we take the impulsivity out, but we still feel that connection. Number 3, sometimes we only give when we are making money. So if we say, I'm not earning, I ran out of money this pay cycle, or I made a loss in my investment this year, I'm not giving. Sorry, it's only in good times. In bad times, I got to keep the money for myself. But regular giving is I give whether I'm in poverty or in wealth. So you put those two things together, you've got systematic benevolence, and regular giving. That underpins a lot of value systems as I talked about. Now in the old Jewish culture, but also in the current Christian culture, you will actually find this is where the concept comes from. It says every tithe, this is the word that's used, Easter is the Jewish word, of herds and flocks, every 10th animal of all that pass under the shepherd's staff shall be holy to the Lord. So the giving in this context is that everything that you earn, every 10 sheep, 1 goes out. So if you have 100 sheep, that's 10. If you have 10, it's 1. It doesn't matter whether the sheep is fat or skinny, whether it's black or white. It doesn't matter. That's the process. It's systematic, it's scaled, it's intentional. There is a choice, there is a connection, and there is a clear impact. This is given to people that are less fortunate. This is given to people that are doing specific reasons and specific things in those cultures where these animals and other offerings and givings are assigned to. This is a very clear example of those two things together. And in all the accounts that you look in these value systems, you see those same 3 ingredients. It doesn't mean people will be excited, but they are happy when they give. Excited as it doesn't mean that they get richer, but they are happy. Remember that very first concept? The very first concept I talked about in that social experiment, active generosity. People are more likely to give when they feel like someone has given to them first. I'm going to come back to that. Just keep that at the back of your mind. Systematic benevolence and planned giving are often ridiculed by people who are not in these faith systems because they say, oh, this is just someone trying to get money off you. It's a profit scheme, right? Like, you just give 10% and you give it to your church or your synagogue or your mosque, and someone else takes the money and goes away and run with it. Why? It's your money, you earn it, you worked hard for it, you should go into your bank account and your bank account alone. What people may not fully understand is that in each of these religious systems, the underpinning concept is that the money doesn't belong to the people, us humans, who are earning. In fact, it's given to us, so the giving back is part of that concept. When you see it in that context, it changes the paradigm altogether. Because active generosity brings happiness when you believe that the money is not yours. It's already been given to you, which you then give to someone else. I'm going to come back to that concept. Because in the third part of it, it's not just systematic, it's not just regular, it's now the meaning behind it. We don't give it because we are assuaging our guilt. We don't give it because we want the reputational. Everyone is there. Oh, excuse me, I got a big check. Sometimes in I've been to in Asian culture, there are sometimes people like to give in public. So I've been to some events where they go on stage and they write this massive check, made out of a cardboard that says $10,000, like huge, and then there's a photo opportunity, and then the minister comes and shakes the hand, and there's this big thing, my corporation, my company is donating $10,000 to, I don't know what, Save the Panda or something like this, and then there's this big cardboard cutout, nothing wrong with pandas, they're great, but a lot of it is for reputational gain. Do you get what I mean? It's a photo opportunity. Sacrificial generosity is, on the other hand, there's no expected ulterior motive. A mom doesn't breastfeed her child because she wants to get reputation. There's no reputation gain there. And so the question I ask is, it's not just about the systematic component. It's not just about the planned, regular concept around it. It's also the mindset behind it. In the Jewish culture, in the Jewish, in the Muslim culture, in the Islamic faith, in the Christian context, it's all regular and planned. There's no reputation around it. You just do it on a regular basis. No one needs to look at you. No one needs to make a public scene about it. Because the concept behind it is, it's not supposed to benefit you, it's supposed to benefit others. You're not expecting a return. In other words, I don't want a reputational boost. I'm not expecting to prosper. Like if I give, I expect someone to give me something back. So, I only give it and I expect some blessings. In fact, some people that have twisted that concept a little bit, and unfortunately you see in popular media these days where some religious systems and some faiths have twisted that concept to say if I give something to the faith, I would expect 10 times back. Or the God or the deity that you serve will give you 10 times of blessings. You give one, you get 10 back, right? So if we go in with that concept, that's not sacrificial. That's expecting a return. That's an investment. Yeah, that's an investment. True. I don't know whether it's a wise investment or not. That one, I'll leave it to you. And the key concept is, it's because of this understanding about whether the money is yours or not yours. I'll use a different phraseology. There's a difference between being a steward and an owner. In my line of work, I do a bit of work with data, and we like to use this word a lot. There's this concept called steward. So now it's a very old language, and not many people use it. So I'm going to use the example of data. Now, I don't expect you to know all these fancy IT things. It's not IT talk. But data stewards are basically people, when I'm involved in data stewardship, it means that I'm responsible, but I don't own the data. In my line of work in healthcare, the data is owned by the patient, right? That's their data, it's their information, it's their private information about their medical history, the medications they take, all those. I don't own it, but I'm responsible for looking after it. So I need to make sure that it's not breached. I need to make sure they have privacy. I need to make sure there's confidentiality. I need to make sure that AI doesn't harvest their data and sell it to China or US or whoever else wants to buy it. I need to make sure that no one goes to check the data that they shouldn't be checking. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm the custodian, if you use another word. I'm like the banker. Someone gives me the money, it's not my money, but I need to look after it. And when I look after it, this is what happens. The difference between being an owner and being a steward is one thinks about personal benefit and the other thinks about greater good. One thinks about the present, the other thinks beyond the present. One thinks about possessing it, like, this is mine. The other thinks about, I need to take care of it and make sure no one damages it. One thinks I'm in charge and the other says, I've been put in charge of the money. One says accountability to the owner, the other says accountability to others. How am I going to answer to the people that own this data or this money or whatever it is? One says, I do a good job with myself in mind. The other says, I do a good job with others in mind. And some don't want to let go, and some are constantly prepared for someone else to take over because it's not mine. This is the explanation in more technical terms of active generosity. If it's your money, you don't want to let go of it. I'm not going to give it because I earned that money. It belongs to me, and I need it to benefit myself. That's why we give $600 away. When someone gives you $100,000, sure, you want 10? Take 10. You want to have a good time? Let's go out and have dinner together. I'll pay for all your, because it's not mine, right? So you see this difference, and that underpins the way we see. If you believe that the money you earn is not yours, you will be more generous. If you believe the time that you have is not yours, you'll be more generous. And you understand now why when the psyche changes, when I see patients who are towards the end of their life or they have a life-limiting condition, they are very generous. Because they know their time is short. They know that they're not going to bring their money with them when they die. So they're like, okay, great. It's not mine anymore. I'm going to leave it for my grandkids. I'm going to leave it to my son, my daughter. I'm going to spend it and enjoy the experience because I have a choice, I have connection, and there is an impact. And that's because they feel, the fourth point, systematic benevolence, planned giving, sacrificial generosity. And the fourth one is controlling the purpose, not the outcome. Many of us want to control the outcome because we feel we own the money. We want to control how things turn out when we donate. If we donate and there's a scandal, I'm never donating to that charity again. How dare they misuse my money? You heard that before? And you see in the newspaper, right? When there's an investment that goes wrong, someone, in the newspaper this week, someone in one of the super funds stole a lot of money, and people are like, they're never going to do this ever again because they want to control the outcome. The outcome was poor, and so they felt this is a bad outcome. When it comes to giving, I want to challenge you to control the purpose, not the outcome. Let me explain what I mean. I'm going to go a little bit more into the legacy concept now. The legacy concept is often what people start to talk about when they talk about future planning. What you want to do when you retire, what you may want to do when you die, what happens when you are no longer working, what happens, or what type of impact you want to leave. Most people, when they see this word, they don't think about money. They think about other things. They think about what money can buy, can do, can impact. So another word for this, impact. If you think of all the famous people in the world, you don't think about how rich they were. When you think about people who left a legacy, you think of names like Albert Einstein, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, right? Is she a rich person? Not really, as far as comparative wealth goes, but she left a very big legacy. Nelson Mandela, right? These are people with legacies because the types of things that they left behind after they passed away towards the latter part of their life was something that had purpose, had principles, and they both lived and left. Well, let that percolate for a second. When you give, we often don't think about these things. But I would argue that there's no difference between donating to charity today and deciding what type of legacy you want to leave. Because the two things are interconnected. And all through the series that we've been going right from the start, talking about earning and spending and saving and investing, comes back to this. Because at the end of the day, if you understand the legacy that you want to leave, it will then cascade upstream, because what that means is that your priorities that you set from now help to determine the purpose for what you want to do with your time, your energy, your money, your skills, your resources, the principles in which you spend your time, your money, use your skills and your resources, and help you to decide not just what you do when you leave the world, die, leave behind, but what you do to live that from now till then. You don't leave your legacy and tomorrow I die, then my legacy starts. Your legacy starts now, right? Mother Teresa's legacy started when she was alive. She lived it before she left it. Many times, we want to leave it but not live it. We assuage our guilt by giving money because we want to, I can't do it. Someone else can go and help the poor people, just pay you to do it. Off we go. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? That's the disconnect. If you know that if you can define your legacy by what brings purpose to your life, what principles help to shape that, you will be able to understand how to live, how to spend, invest, save, earn, prioritize your money today. Because that will determine what happens next. There are books being written on this, and the TED Talks being talked about this. There's a book called Die With Zero. You don't give away all your money before you die. This is the concept, because you want to live your legacy before you get to your deathbed, and then you have $6 million to give away, and then you'll be like, too late. Can't live it now. I can only leave it behind. And so the questions that I want you to think about to stimulate some part of your thinking is, what desires do you have for things you leave behind? If you, this is not a morbid talk, okay, please, you're not going to die tomorrow. I hope no one dies tomorrow. But if you had to be left behind, these are the serious things that people actually talk about. Like, I have, Clarissa works on an oncology ward. Like, these are young adults and young patients who they're leaving things behind. What are they leaving behind? Soft toys? Maybe precious iPad, computer? Like, these are the things that young kids with cancer who have a limited lifespan, they're thinking about. Number two, what would you like your assets to do for those who you choose to support? Your house, your car, your jewelry, your computer, your property? What assets and beneficiaries do you have? Who would it go to? Your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, your grandpa, your granduncle, your neighbor? Who would it go to? What types of intentions do you want to support? Like what causes? What is close to your heart? And what can you start right now? Because if you wait till you're about to die, it's a bit late. You can't live it. Actually, if you go to someone if you wanted to go today to a professional to write up your will, you know, a will, like what happens when you die, these are the questions they're going to ask you. So I'm just giving it to you in advance. There are actually people who can help you to write those things for free, to set up those things for free. So if you're interested, you can come and ask me later on. I don't do this for a living. I'm just saying these are the questions they're going to ask you. So you might as well start thinking about them now, because if you start thinking about them now, you understand how to live your life between now and when you may pass away. For me, these things are not always monetary. I'll give you an example. This is my dad's briefcase. In the 1980s, this is a very common item. Today, you don't see this thing anymore. This is top of the line Samsonite briefcase. You know, nowadays Samsonite makes the, what do you call this thing? Luggage, right? Lightweight luggage, 4-wheel spinner, you know, very high tech. In those days, the best seller for Samsonite was the briefcase. This briefcase weighs more than the luggage today. Okay? Intentionally, because the briefcase is supposed to be heavy duty. If it's dropped, it's gonna provide protection. It's hard. If you knock on the outside, you know, you can smack it. It's not going to bend. It's hard case with metal so that people do try and stab it to let the money, the cash, whatever it is, the things spill out of the briefcase and not going to be able to do it. It's like steel reinforced, titanium, like I don't know what it is, but it's a pretty solid thing. Now my dad had this briefcase in the 1980s, right? And you remember those pictures or those movies that you watch. Everyone who works in the business world carries the briefcase to work. Lawyers carry the briefcase to the court. It is a status symbol, or it is an indication that this is an important person because they've got documents. I don't know what else they store in there. You know, not cash. I don't know. There's no laptop in those days that's this small, right? Laptop computers in those days are big. Sorry? Lunch. Okay. I don't know what they store in there. For whatever reason, so this is my dad's briefcase. When I was young, I always wanted to carry his briefcase. When he came home, he opened the door, I run, give him a hug, and hold his briefcase from the door to the... It's very heavy, you know, like a little kid is dragging this briefcase. Because I don't want to put inside this pen and other things, documents, very important documents, bank documents, whatever it is. And so when he's... obviously one day the briefcase went out of fashion, right? People now have laptop bag, crumpler bag, all sorts of, I don't know what other things you carry these days, the messenger bag, all sorts of things. But in those days, this was it. And my dad gave me that briefcase because I wanted it so much when I was a kid. When I did my exams for pediatrics, we have to have a bag carrying all the, for us as pediatricians, we have lots of toys and things to test the kids' reflexes and see how they pick up toys. It's part of what we call a developmental exam. So we need a bag to carry all these things. And so I took my dad's briefcase and I put all my toys, and I still have it in my house, toys and sultanas and all sorts of funny reflex hammer, all sorts of things in the bag to carry to my pediatric exam. And everywhere I went, my colleagues were envious of my bag. Now, where do you get this briefcase? From the 1980s, like very hip, right? Vintage, like wearing a suit and carrying the briefcase. And what it means to me, this briefcase is not worth a lot of money these days. But the legacy it's left in my family reminds me of where I came from. The briefcase, for me, told me that my dad worked really hard to provide for my family, that it was an indication that he wanted to pass that same work ethic down to his kids, that it was a privilege to have the briefcase, not an entitlement, and that it was something to be treasured, not taken for granted. And so legacy may not just be, I've got $1,000, I'm going to sprinkle it, 500 to my son, 500 to my daughter. It's not just that. It's the principle and the purpose behind what it is. I can give you the briefcase, you might be like, this is worthless. I just sell it at the garage sale for $20. You want to buy it? Take it away for free. But I would never sell this briefcase. It sits in my house. I know exactly what it is. It doesn't even matter what I put inside. This soft toy was part of my, playing with the kids' toys. But it has left for me a legacy from my dad. And if I ever have a child one day, I'm going to show him the briefcase and say, this is what this means to me. If you think about it that way, and I ask you this question, what would you change with your finances, with your wealth, with the money that you have or the money that you earn? I think it would radically shift your thinking. If you are a steward, not an owner, if you are sacrificially giving, not giving out of guilt or for an ulterior motive, if you have planned and systematic benevolence, not spur of the moment impulsive, it has to be underpinned, and it can only bring true happiness if there's a purpose and a principle behind it. Don't give because someone else is giving more. Don't give because you feel sorry for the kids on the TV. I mean, yes, please feel sorry for them. But don't give just because you feel sorry. Don't give just because you want some expected, unspoken return. You only get happiness when there's choice. You do it freely. There's connection. You feel that there is a connection between you and who you're giving to. And there's an impact. The impact is not in the outcome, but in the purpose. I want to challenge you that as you think about what legacy you want to live, not just what you write down on a piece of paper in a will, like, I want my house to go to my whatever. I want my bank account to go to Helen. I want my car to go to not Heinrich, whatever you want to write in the will. But think about it in terms of what you can live today. That changes your perspective ultimately. Whatever you invest, if you make 100% return, great. Because I'm just a custodian, I'm going to pass it on to someone else. I can guarantee you'll be much more happy. You may not be richer, but you may be much more happy than the person sitting next to you. So I'm going to finish there. Think about, think about what may change. Think about your purpose. Think about the principles that you want to do, that underpin that, and think about how you are able to live that, not just to leave it behind. Because if you truly are talking about borrowed dime, the money is not yours, then you have a different perspective on how to spend your money, how to save your money, how to earn your money, how to invest your money, but more importantly, how to give of your money, your time, your resources, your skills, and everything that you have. Thank you for listening.